And so I start doing the show, and then when I turn around, there's Fleabag sitting in the corner. I'm like, holy shit, that's Fleabag. What
Wow.
the fuck?
You weren't
Um,
warned? Jesus. Yeah.
Welcome to Bitch Talk. I'm your host, Erin.
And I'm co-host Ange, aka Captain Party.
And for more than 11 years, the show has celebrated underrepresented voices in pop culture and beyond.
But not in the snore kind of way, which is why our listeners and followers have graciously voted us Best of the Bay, Best Podcast on 48 Hills for 3 years in a row. Three-peat, bitches.
If you like what you hear, follow us on Instagram and check out our website, Bitch Talk Podcast, and rate us wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're begging you to judge us. When does that ever happen? Oh, you're not going to say anything?
What would I say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, on that note, on with the show. Clink. All right, Bitch Talkers, we are celebrating SF Sketchfest with one of their really special performers, Cassie Workman, whose show is called Aberdeen. And we are so excited to talk to you today. Thank you so much for being on Bitch Talk.
no, it's such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So since this is our first time having you on the show, can you introduce yourself to our audience, whatever you want to share, where you're from, how you got into comedy?
Sure. Well, my name is Cassie Workman. I'm a stand-up comic from Sydney, Australia. And I've been performing there for, I guess, about 10 or 12 years. And I moved here to the US in February of last year. So it's almost been a year of living here in the US. And I came here mostly to perform my show Aberdeen, which is not a comedy, strangely. And then I ended up doing a lot of stand-up around the country as well. Um, so yeah, here I am in freezing New Jersey.
Oh, that's where you are.
Yeah.
Wow. So you moved to the US last year. You're gonna have so much to talk about in the next few years, if you choose to stay in the US. I don't know if your timing's great or terrible, but I am so glad that you're you're in the US.
Yeah, yeah. There's some downsides to being in the U.S. right now, but it's it's been my ambition for a long time to come here, and I think it's it's a very beautiful country, and there's a lot of opportunity here, and I met somebody that I love here, and so I guess I'm staying. Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to dive into Aberdeen. And if we can, I don't want to give too many things away because I want people to come to the show, but what an interesting topic, Cassie. How long were you working on that before you decided, okay, I'm going to take the stage with this?
Yeah, I guess probably about 2 years in the making, or even more, maybe. Um, it was something that I like very seriously started writing during the pandemic, when I suddenly had a lot of time, and I used that time to seriously start writing Aberdeen. I had just come back from a trip to the U.S. Where I was going all through Washington to see the places where Kurt Cobain lived, and where he died, and where he grew up and stuff. And I was standing under the Young Street Bridge in Aberdeen, Washington, and it hit me that I should turn this show into a Greek tragedy style or Shakespearean style poem.
Do you remember the first time that you heard Nirvana? Was it always a band, like one of your favorite bands or music that sort of helped you get through childhood? Because I definitely remember when they first came out, and it was just like something that I'd never heard before.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. It was a real shock to everyone. I think. Like I remember when Teen Spirit broke real big, and I probably would have been about 10 years old, but I was very interested in music at the time, and I was a very weird kid living in a very conservative area, and it was the first time that I'd seen something that I really related to, and it was so different to everything else that had been happening at the time. It was so it was so punk and it was so, unpolished and youthful and exciting. And of course, Kurt Cobain was extremely good looking, and all of these things were like, wow, this is incredible. What is this? And then not so long later, of course, he was dead. So it was a really, I thought, a really tragic tale. Particularly for people of that generation who, at the time we didn't really have the tools to deal with that kind of thing, and people weren't talking about their feelings and communicating their emotions like, like we would do now, and there wasn't like this prevalence of therapy and healing and stuff, and so everybody had to sort of kind of deal with that quietly in their own way, and I really think that we never finished doing that properly. And so one of the things about the show that I wanted to achieve with the show was to like help people finish doing that.
I do want to know, I don't know much about the writing process for this. Was everything just kind of out of your head and your heart and your soul and how you wanted to approach this? Or were you reading things about Kurt? Were you interviewing anyone?
I was doing like research into his life, and that was really helpful for me, although not much of the specifics I think really made it in. It's really more about this is very much from a fan perspective. I've heard about the perspectives of people who were close to him and his family and his friends and so on. But what is always left out is how his death affected the ordinary people who just really loved his music, and their story wasn't being told. So I wanted to make this for the fans, you know, whilst being, very respectful to the family, and then understanding that, like, a lot of people who loved him and who knew him are still alive and still suffering because of, his death. Um, but I wanted something that would like heal the fans a bit.
Speaking of fans, you have praise from Phoebe Waller-Bridge on your for the ads for your show. Like, how did that come about? She's speaking of writing and being a storyteller. She's definitely one of my favorite modern
Oh,
day
neat. Yeah,
writers. So, how did
yeah,
that come about? Did you get to meet her?
yeah, yeah. We're still friends. I was doing the show in Scotland, and I was in this huge room doing this bizarre show that was really hard to explain to people. Like when you tell people that you're doing this show, which is like an hour long epic poem about trying to save Kurt Cobain's life, people are like, "Oh, that sounds great." So I was having trouble getting people in the door, so I canceled a couple of the first shows, and then I think the third or fourth night, my producer was like, "Oh, you've got some people coming. You got about 10, 15 people coming in tonight." And I was like, "Okay, great, that's fantastic." And it starts in blackout, and I walk into the middle of the room, and I was doing it in the round at this time, and so I start doing the show, and then when I turn around, there's Fleabag sitting in the corner. I'm like, "Holy shit, that's Fleabag! What
Wow.
the fuck?"
You weren't
Um,
warned? Jesus. Yeah.
and at the end of the show, she came up to me and she introduced herself, and I was like, I know who you are. And she really, really loved the show, and we got along really well, and we had a smoke out the front, and we were talking about it. And she said, I really think your show is incredible, and I'm going to tell everybody I know to come and see your show. And she did, and I ended up winning two awards. And I really feel like I owe a lot of that to her promotion of my work. And yeah, and we still talk sometimes. So she's been really, really supportive and really cool. She's a really, really lovely person.
How fortuitous. I love that story. Thank you for sharing, Cassie. I do want to talk about your comedy career, and since you have been in the US for almost a year, what are the differences for you between doing stand up here in the States and then also in Australia and elsewhere?
I think the differences in audiences pretty much anywhere are pretty minimal. I've been working at the Comedy Cellar a lot in New York.
Oh, love that
Um,
spot.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and they've been really really nice to me. And SD, who runs the place, like really did me a solid because I couldn't do anything other than perform in this country. So I was really looking for a lot of work, and I got a lot of work. And I those rooms are like people come from all over the states to see comedy there. It's like a world class venue, and you know all these people come in, especially from Ohio or whatever, to see a great show. So you have to absolutely bring your A game every time, and you're sharing the stage with like world class people. So I had to get like extremely good extremely quickly, and learned a lot in that time. Just in terms of like the energy that you need to bring here has got to be like so much more focused and like kinetic, you know. Like in Australia, I feel like we're a much more laid back people. And it's harder to get us excited about things, so you can afford to be a bit more relaxed in your delivery and but here I found myself having to like yeah perform the hell out of things and I got extremely good at that extremely quickly, and it's because I was surrounded by the best people in the world at the best club in the world.
Hmm.
Well, it's crazy who shows up at the Comedy Cellar on a daily basis. Like really incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you're taking the show to San Francisco, which we're so excited about. We're definitely going to be in the audience. Is this your first time performing in the city? Have you been here before?
Well, I love San Francisco. Yeah, I've been to San Francisco before, and it's one of my favorite places in the world. Honestly, it's one of my favorite places in the world. I've never performed there before, but like I love the weather, and I love the food, and I love the atmosphere. It's just a really, really beautiful place. I think that, you know, if things work out for me, I'd probably move there at some point.
Thank you.
It'd be
Bring it.
delightful.
Please do. See more folks like you, Cassie.
Yay!
One of the other things I want to bring up before we start wrapping up is I read that in 2017 and 2018 you were documenting your quest to save money on surgery, um,
hmm
on trans surgery, and I'm curious about that storyline for you. And was it easy to go public with that? And I mean, that's very public.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was already a public figure before I started transitioning. Um, so I already had like a few TV appearances and stuff in Australia. And I was a pretty popular comedian, and people knew me as that person. Um, but I think that people also sort of knew that I was like super depressed
Mm.
and something wasn't right with me. And um, so I guess when I came out, people were sort of surprised, but it also I found a lot of people saying, "Oh, okay, that's what it is."
Hmm.
Uh, so I came out uh, publicly at a storytelling night, and it was a really really beautiful experience. And but you know, as an artist, you don't have heaps of money, so um, I had to sort of fundraise for that over the internet, and I still appreciate every single person who committed to that, and I just think it's incredible that people would do that to help me. Um, yeah, and so now I don't have that to worry about. I wouldn't say that I'm never depressed anymore, but I'm not depressed about this anymore.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
it doesn't solve everything, but it does solve that, which frees up a lot of space in your brain to work on the other things, you know?
You're in America now. You may as well be an American, be depressed like all the rest of us.
Sure, sure.
You're just, soaking up
Get
local color.
medicated.
Yeah.
Well, I am really glad that the States is showing you some love.
Yeah.
We cannot wait to see you, Cassie. For those listening, we will be there on Thursday, January 30th at 7:30 at the Gateway Theater in San Francisco to see Aberdeen, and we cannot wait. Thank you so much for being on Bitch Talk.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for joining us on today's show. You can find more information about this episode in our show notes.
If you're missing us, you can visit us at bitchtalkpodcast.com to sign up for our newsletter and buy us a cup of coffee.
Did you know we're also on the radio? You can find us at bff.fm.
And lastly, rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. All the cool bitches are doing it.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.fm podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.fm, best frequencies forever.